Chicago was never destined to become a world city in a single moment. Its rise was slow, uneven, and shaped by rivers, trade routes, experiments, disasters, and relentless ambition. In this reconstruction, we move through Chicago's early story using AI-enhanced recreations inspired by historic images, allowing us to step back into moments that no longer exist. This journey begins in the early 19th century, when Chicago was still more idea than city. Chicago in 1810 was little more than a remote meeting point at the edge of enormous open land. This scene shows a quiet riverbank where a handful of rough cabins sit close to the water. Canoes drift slowly along the river, and the surrounding land stretches outward, wide and largely untouched. Nature dominates the view, guiding travel and trade long before streets, bridges, or railways reshaped the landscape. It is a simple, almost fragile moment in time, capturing Chicago before growth arrived to transform everything. By 1825, Chicago still feels more like a frontier settlement than a future metropolis. Wooden structures line the river's edge, and small groups of people move through their daily routines. Canoes cut across the water, while figures gather near the shore and riders cross basic wooden bridges that loosely connect the community. Life moves at a practical, unhurried pace, shaped by the land and immediate needs rather than long-term planning. It is a quiet, grounded view of a place not yet aware of what it will become. This later sketch, created decades afterward, attempts to show Fort Dearborn as it may have appeared around 1820. Though its accuracy has been debated, it still offers a sense of scale and isolation. The fort sits slightly elevated near the river, surrounded by scattered buildings and open space. The settlement feels modest and exposed, with the winding river reinforcing the sense of distance from the rest of the country. At this stage, Chicago is still a frontier outpost, far removed from the dense city it would eventually become. This illustration depicts one of Chicago's earliest cultural landmarks, a small theater that once stood along a muddy downtown street. From the outside, the building appears plain, but inside it hosted plays, musical performances, and early operas that brought entertainment to a growing population. For a young settlement, the theater represented confidence and cultural ambition. Though the building itself did not survive long, its influence helped Chicago's emerging identity as more than just a trading post. An aerial-style view from the early 1850s shows Chicago on the edge of transformation. The street grid is beginning to take shape, spreading outward from the river. Ships line the shoreline as commerce increases, and warehouses cluster near the water. The city feels compact but energetic, alive with construction and movement. Only a few years later, the change is dramatic. Streets fill in, neighborhoods extend farther into the distance, and rail lines carve straight paths through the landscape. Chicago is still young, but its pace of growth is unmistakable. A photograph taken after the devastating fire of 1871 captures Chicago in a moment of stunned silence. Entire blocks lie in ruins, reduced to charred walls, fallen columns, and piles of brick. Once grand buildings stand hollow against the skyline, their interiors completely gone. The scene feels frozen, as if the city is holding its breath. The fire moved quickly, but its aftermath left a deep stillness that revealed the scale of loss Chicago had suffered in a single night. This illustration shows the fire during its earliest and most violent hours. Flames leap from rooftop to rooftop, driven by strong winds that scatter burning debris across the city. Streets disappear beneath smoke and sparks as the fire races toward the river. From the water's edge, crowds watch helplessly while the city burns. What once felt secure vanishes in moments. This is the turning point, when Chicago's future hangs uncertain in the glow of the flames. This drawing presents one of Chicago's early major rail stations during the mid-19th century. With tall roofs and long platforms, the depot dominates its surroundings. Wagons and carriages crowd the street outside, unloading goods and passengers at all hours. People move with purpose, arriving and departing in constant motion. The station is more than a transportation hub. It represents Chicago's role as a growing gateway, connecting the interior of the country to distant markets. By the late 19th century, Michigan Avenue reflects a city stepping confidently into a new era. Large hotels and commercial buildings rise along the street, their stone and steel facades signaling permanence and ambition. The avenue feels wide and organized, with pedestrians along the sidewalks and traffic flowing steadily below awnings and balconies. Chicago has rebuilt itself and learned how to grow upward, shaping a skyline that announces its arrival as a modern city. The Home Insurance Building marks a defining moment in Chicago's architectural history. Completed in 1885, it was not the tallest structure of its time, but its steel frame construction changed everything. The streets around it are busy with workers and early vehicles, while the building itself appears strong and restrained. This is the moment when Chicago redefined how cities could rise. Its influence reached far beyond the city, reshaping skylines across the world. One of Chicago's earliest surviving photographs captures the city's Civic Center while it was still young. The courthouse and city hall stand solid and heavy, with simple lines and a tall dome rising above the roof. Figures gather along the steps, blurred slightly by long exposure times. The image feels quiet and almost fragile, preserving a moment of early public life before the noise, height, and density of the modern city took hold. A street-level photograph from the early 20th century shows a busy Chicago avenue, alive with motion. Streetcars run down the center, storefronts line both sides, and people move between shops and sidewalks. Horse-drawn wagons still share the road, even as the city shifts toward a faster, more mechanical pace. The scene feels ordinary and unstaged, capturing a neighborhood finding its rhythm in a rapidly changing city. This view places us inside the world's Columbian Exposition of 1893. Wide basins of water reflect monumental white buildings, and crowds fill the open plazas. Boats glide across the surface while domes and statues rise in the distance. Though temporary, the Exposition was designed to make a statement. It announced that Chicago had recovered, rebuilt, and was ready to present itself on the world stage. Looking back across these moments, Chicago's story becomes clear. From quiet riverbanks and scattered cabins to rail hubs, rebuilt streets, and a rising skyline, the city continually reshaped itself. Disaster did not stop its growth. Instead, it strengthened its resolve. Chicago's early history is not just a record of buildings and streets, but a story of persistence, reinvention, and the determination to keep